The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
And hello again, wrestling fans. Welcome to another edition of This Week in History. This week we're going to look at the week of March 18th to the 24th. I want to thank you for joining us, whether you're on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else you get podcasts from. And, of course, visually, we are on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. New streaming service that way. We've been on that for a few weeks. Be sure to check it out. Designed by a Canadian for Canada and the rest of the world. Somewhat of a competition to YouTube, or could be a compliment to YouTube. We don't know just yet. They're brand new. But either way, it's another outlet for us to reach out to our fans and be interactive with. Now, I also remind you, over on our Facebook page, the March Madness tournament for the independent wrestling is going on still. We just started the round of 16, round number 3, last 16 competitors from 64, and we're going to make it to the end of the month with finding who's going to be on top of that. We also want to remind you that the Predictions League year number 2 starts Wrestlemania weekend, which is next weekend. We got Stand and Deliver and 2 nights of WrestleMania. Not going to go with Ring of Honor. I'm thinking about adding Ring of Honor to the Predictions League, but that's a work in progress, and we're going to see what else is going on at the time. But it's a triple shot happening. Predictions League. Go to our Facebook page for more details, along with our website, scumbagswrestling.ca, and all the details are there. You can win great prizes throughout the season, have bragging rights, and you never know. It's also going to encourage you to watch more pay-per-views and have your fandom. But, like I said, we are here for history, and we can't do that until we go over to Niagara Falls. He was just out of screen for a second, but he's still here. And it's Jonesy. How are you, sir?
I played you, man. Made you think I was leaving again.
I know. Hey, who knows? Like I said, it is Friday. We're a day behind because, well, family and work obligations come first. But we want to make sure we cover history. Got a lot to go through. But, yeah, it's one of those evenings where staying inside and listening or watching stuff about wrestling is a good thing to do. So, without further ado, if you want to start us off with some headlines.
All right. I'm almost there. There I am. All right. So it's March 18th, 20 years ago. I got a piece of chocolate in my mouth. It didn't go away soon enough, so. On Raw from Montreal, Quebec, Hulk Hogan returned to the red and yellow and received a 17-plus minute ovation from the fans to start the show. Hulk Hogan and The Rock defeated the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, by countout. Also on the show, Brock Lesnar made his WWF television debut, interrupting a hardcore championship match between Maven and Al Snow. With Lesnar was a returning Paul Heyman, who was fired in late 2001. This show also had the CEO Linda McMahon announcement of the brand split and drafts starting the following Monday.
Yeah, I was listening to something to wrestle with, and they were talking about the different WrestleManias and that, and how at 18 fans made Hogan basically turn face. He was going in there as a heel with the NWO to go against The Rock, and the fans, just the way nostalgia is, and Bizarro Land, Toronto, kind of changed things, and Rock and Hogan changed their matchup on the fly, and Rocky played the heel, but then they were both faces by the end of the whole thing. They knew they had, unfortunately, something different, and I think that's why they threw out Hall and Nash to go after Rock and Hogan at the end of that match. But Bruce mentioned that Hogan, pronouns pal, Hogan did not have his red and yellow. He actually flew from Montreal in the WD jet down to Florida because Hogan's wife wasn't around at the time to bring him the stuff. He flew down in the corporate jet, grabbed his yellow and red stuff, and flew back to Montreal in time for the show. And he started the show off in the red and in the black and white, got the 17-minute ovation, but finished the night in the red and yellow, teaming with The Rock.
Nice. I can't say I remember that. I remember it happened, but I can't remember if I actually seen that episode. So we're carrying on. 21 years ago, March 19th, 2001, WCW presented Monday Nitro. Eric Bischoff made an announcement that next edition of Nitro, A Night of Champions, would be the last on the Turner Networks. That wasn't the only bad news that night, as the fans had to sit through the last taping on Thunder. The main event was Scott Steiner and Jeff Jarrett defeating Dustin Rhodes in a handicap match.
Yeah, that's going to put butts in seats.
Yeah.
Or ratings on the tally. You wonder why Turner canceled them. But yeah, this call, it was more of a call-in Bischoff did with his picture on screen, and Booker T basically introduced him, and he was standing on the ramp the whole time that Bischoff was talking. We are going to look at next week, the final Nitro and the simulcast with Raw during that in our Monday Night Wars review.
And that we always look forward to because it's always fun talking about that. March 19th, 2001, Rhino and Spike Dudley both made their WWF debuts. Also on the 19th, 2002, at a SmackDown taping, Rico would make his WWF main roster debut as the stylist to the then tag team champions Billy and Chuck. Kevin Nash and The Rock fought to a no contest post-match. The NWO got a new member, the returning X-Pac. And of course, we all remember Rico. He was on a episode of American Gladiators. Plus, he was also a cop, and I believe that's what he went back to, if I remember.
Yeah, in Las Vegas. I was going to mention that.
Sorry, I took your thunder.
That's all good.
We were talking SmackDown, so that's okay. 15 years ago, March 19th, 2007, on Raw, ECW champion Bobby Lashley became the first man officially to win the Master Lock Challenge by breaking out of Chris Masters' submission hold.
And now he does it himself.
Nice.
With the Hurt Lock.
On the same show, Edge won a 10-man last chance battle royal, last eliminating Ric Flair to enter the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 23. 7 years ago, March 19th, 2015, WWE announced that legendary pro wrestler Tatsumi Fujinami would be inducted into their Hall of Fame. Fujinami, a former WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion and the protege of Antonio Inoki, won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship 6 times and former NWA Champion. 22 years ago, March 20th, 2000, on Raw is War, Triple H defeated The Rock and The Big Show in a triple threat match to retain the WWF Championship. After the match, Triple H received a shock from CEO Linda McMahon as she announced that the main event to WrestleMania would be a fatal four-way match pitting Triple H, The Rock, The Big Show, and the unretired Mick Foley. And on top of that, there would be a McMahon in every wrestler's corner.
Yeah, just briefly, we normally just talk about history, but it was also revealed today during an ESPN interview that Triple H had to retire officially. I guess the heart problems that he had months ago were really damaging, and he has like a defibrillator and cannot wrestle any longer. And so he finally made that official announcement earlier today. So, as we mentioned last week with the passing of Scott Hall, thanks for everything with Scott, but now definitely thank you for everything, Triple H. And that was one of the examples of how the McMahon-Helmsley era was shaping things 22 years ago in WWE.
And we are March 21st, 1995. Taping of Raw featured the debut of Shawn Michaels' new talking segment, The Heartbreak Hotel. It would air on April 4th. 24 years ago, March 21st, 1998, WWF presented the Slammy Awards from the Westin Hotel in Chicago, Illinois. The show airing live on the USA Network and was the last Slammy Awards until 2008. You want to run down the awards here?
Some of the awards, or all the awards that happened, depending on how far I go. New Sensation, Rocky Maivia. Best Dressed, Sable. The Best Tattoo, Undertaker. Match of the Year, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match. Best Hair goes to Hunter S. Helmsley. The Loose Screw Award went to Mankind. Best Bow Tie, well, there was no winner because Owen Hart just stole the Slammy to be a 2-time Slammy Award winner.
Good for him.
Best Entrance Music, The Undertaker. Best Finisher, Shawn Michaels with Sweet Chin Music. Best Couple, Goldust and Marlena. Freedom of Speech Award went to Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Star of the Highest Magnitude, whatever that means, Undertaker getting 3 Slammys in one episode. Lifetime Achievement Award went to Arnold Skolin, and Miss Slammy was Sable with 2 Slammy Awards in the evening.
Well, if RVD would have stuck around earlier in the WWF, he could have got the Star of the Highest Magnitude.
Maybe.
All right, 23 years ago, March 22nd, 1999, on Raw's War, Stone Cold Steve Austin defeated the Big Show, Paul White, in his WWF in-ring debut. The opening segment of the show had Austin driving a beer truck down the aisle and treat Vince McMahon. Shane McMahon and The Rock to a beer bath. Of course, Vince McMahon showed everyone how to swim in the shallow puddle of beer. Of course, a very classic segment of Raw when Raw was really fun to watch.
Yeah, and Austin admitted to almost blowing his head off trying to take a drink of the beer as it was coming out of the hose. But with the amount of pressure that was going on in that hose, didn't happen too much. Just wonder about the spray going on, going beyond the ring and wetting down the fans at ringside, including maybe children.
Yes. Now, mind you, it doesn't mean that it was actual beer that came out of that.
Well, if Steve's trying to take a swig of it, that was probably beer.
Well, maybe he didn't know it wasn't beer. Or maybe it's a non-alcoholic beer.
Maybe.
All right. So I did that one. 18 years ago, March 22nd, 2004, WWE presented its first ever draft lottery on Raw. Each general manager from Raw and SmackDown, Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman, each had a tumbler with the other show's roster. Each manager would pick 6 names from their bins. Any name picked out would be moved to the opposite show. Out of the 6 names picked by Bischoff, one name picked was Heyman. So Heyman quit because he did not want to work for Bischoff. What did you think about that?
Yeah, gotta love how they like to do those type of swerves. I don't think he actually officially quit, but they did have him quit on TV. They did the same thing to JR, where they didn't think JR was going to be moving from Raw over to SmackDown. And then, sure enough, he moved over to SmackDown, and the stunned look on his face on live TV was what they were looking for. So they did the same thing on this one with Heyman.
Nice. All right. 12 years ago, March 22nd, 2002, on TNA Impact, Jeff Jarrett defeated Mick Foley in a no disqualification career versus career match. With the loss, Foley was fired from TNA. Of course, he wasn't really fired. He was just given a 4-month break because TNA was quickly using his contracted number of matches. On his way out, Foley punches Bubba the Love Sponge and legitimately bloodies his nose and gives him a black eye.
Hogan probably liked that.
Yeah,
in hindsight.
Probably did it for Hogan. Yeah. 21 years ago, March 23rd, 2001, WWF announces via press release they bought WCW and finally crushed the competition. 18 years ago, March 23rd, 2004, at a SmackDown taping, Kurt Angle announces he is the new general manager of SmackDown, replacing Paul Heyman. Also on the show, Bradshaw introduces his new gimmick, John Bradshaw Layfield.
I actually didn't mind that. It's a little J.R. Ewing-ish, but he was going almost off by his side gig. He was a financial wizard and doing Fox News and stuff like that. They just gave him the J.R. Ewing thing and clipped his hair and made it normal instead of shoe polish black. And it was probably the most successful move that he ever did make.
He's one of those guys I would never guess would become a main eventer. I've never really liked his matches, his style, but he definitely is a big man, and never forget that match he had with The Undertaker at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
18 years ago, also on March 23rd, but in 2004, at a SmackDown taping, Kurt Angle announced.
You got that one.
Oh, I did. Geez, see? Oh, wow, I got pretty far before. 19 years ago, March 24th, 2003, former WCW World Champion Bill Goldberg signs with WWE.
And that concludes our headlines for this week. Now on to a Superstar Spotlight featuring Rick the Model Martel, who's celebrating a birthday.
Awesome. One of my favorites. I love Rick Martel. Richard Vangnault, born March 18th, 1956, is a Canadian former professional wrestler, trainer, and television presenter, best known by his ring name, Rick Martel. He's best known for his appearances with American Wrestling Association, the WWF, of course, and WCW. Championships held by Martel over the course of his career included the AWA World Heavyweight Championship, WCW World Television Championship, and WWF World Tag Team Championship. I wish he did a little. They gave him a little more in WCW. I think he was great in the WWF, but in WCW he would have fit just perfectly on Saturday night. Give him the TV belt for a long time, not this, back and forth. But at least he did get a championship, because the best he could do in the WWF was a tag belt.
Yeah, well, the thing is, as well, with that thing with WCW, they might have had that idea, but he ended up hurting his back. And that's why they had him drop it back to Booker T. We actually ran into Rick Martel along with Tatanka at the Western Fair one time, and it was amazing that they were able to be friends again after Tatanka lost his feather to him. And I even brought that up, and they're like, we made up, we're good. But yeah, like you said, a lot of tag team titles, 3-time tag team champion in WWE. 2 of them were with Tony Gurria, and of course most people our age would remember more of Strikeforce with Tito Santana. Mm-hmm. Big moment at WrestleMania 5 when he came back after the injury. He was also taking care of his wife, I believe, and Tito accidentally forearmed him when I think it was Tully Blanchard ducked it in their WrestleMania 5 match, and Rick walked off, and we end up getting the Model. And after that, I think one of his better highlighted matches, people might think it still stinks, is the Blindfold match that happened with Jake at WrestleMania. And that was just a lot of really good ring psychology. Yes, people can look closely and see that they had eye holes meshed in there. But the pointing and getting the crowd going and clapping to misdirect and stuff like that was really good work of the audience and both Jake and Rick. It's unfortunate the back injury happened, and he is one guy who is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. I think it's by choice, unfortunately. So it'll take a while before we can hopefully recognize Rick Martel for his contribution to wrestling.
And I want to know where the hell, like, the arrogance, it should be available.
Yeah, and not in the bug spray atomizer.
I think it worked because of that bug sprayer.
Well, eventually you did have it like in a hookah-looking.
Oh yeah, with the little sponge
bottle.
thingy. Yeah. Martel is from a family of wrestlers and made his professional debut at age 17 when his brother Michael, a wrestler, asked him to replace an injured wrestler. Martel already was a skilled amateur wrestler and quickly adapted to professional wrestling. Martel wrestled throughout the world, winning titles in Canada in Stu Hart Stampede Wrestling and Vancouver-based NWA All-Star Wrestling. New Zealand, Japan, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico-based World Wrestling Council. His first real success in the United States came in the National Wrestling Alliance, Portland's affiliate, Pacific Northwestern Wrestling, in 1979, where he became a top talent, holding the Canadian and PNW tag team titles simultaneously. He left PNW on August 16th, 1980, when he lost a loser leaves town match to Buddy Rose. Martel also served as a stint as a booker for a wrestling territory in Hawaii, where he would help the promotion set up matches and construct the storylines that would play out inside and out of the ring. And that's just a little bit about Rick Martel.
Now on to some other birthdays that happened this week.
Yes, other birthdays. March 18th would have been the 96th birthday to legendary wrestling announcer Lance Lanier Russell. He passed away at the age of 91 in 2014. Russell was renowned for his relaxing wrestling style and a legendary announcer in the Memphis territory from 1959 to 1997. He also announced for the Continental Wrestling Association and would serve as an announcer for WCW from 1989 to 1992 and would work weekly Monday night bouts at the Mid-South Coliseum, as well for Smoky Mountain Wrestling in its later years before going into semi-retirement in 1997. Russell was the ring announcer in the 1999 Andy Kaufman film Man on the Moon. Russell did the commentary for the real Lawler-Kaufman match. The commentary can be found on the WWE DVD release, Greatest Wrestling Stars of the 80s. All right, more birthdays. March 18th, EC3 turns 39. And if I didn't mention, Rick the Martel turned 66. And Vanessa Bourne turns 34. On the 19th, we got Rick McGraw, who would have turned 67. Jimmy Havoc, who turns 38. Matt Sydal, 39. And March 19th, it's a happy 35th birthday to April Jeanette Brooks, a.k.a. AJ Lee. Born April Jeanette Mendez in Union City, New Jersey, Brooks met then WWF diva Lita at age 12 at an autograph signing. She competed in the third season of NXT, is a former WWE Divas champion, and married to CM Punk. And I always say, out of all the ladies that have ever been through the WWF, I think she's the top as far as just good looking.
Yeah, AJ was one of my favorites, especially in that era.
And she could wrestle. That was the thing. Like, she was small, but she could hold her own as far as believing that, okay, yeah, she can get out of that situation.
Yeah, she was stuck in that middle era in a way because there were still a lot of divas going on. And if she'd been a little bit sooner, she would have been with Trish, Lita, and Ivory and Jackie. She'd been a little bit later, she would have been with Charlotte, Becky, Alexa Bliss, Bailey, and everybody else that are around right now. Unfortunately, she was in that middle age of diva-ish.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully she does return at some point for a match or a run somewhere. March 20th, Sting turns 63, and he's still rocking it in the ring. At least I assume he's rocking it. Why would they let an old man still perform in the ring?
Even with spinal stenosis, I guess he jumped recently off a balcony through a couple tables on a recent AEW show.
Well, maybe he's going, you know what? I'm going to keep doing this until I physically, my body won't let me.
Seems like it.
March 20th, Matt Taven turns 37. And title changes. 37 years ago, March 18th, 1985, in North Carolina, Ivan and Nikita Koloff defeated Manny Fernandez and Dusty Rhodes to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. Also on the 18th, but in 2001, Alex Skipper and Kid Romeo defeated the Filthy Animals, Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio Jr., in a tournament final to win the WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team Championship.
Yep, a title that lasted title reigns for Elix Skipper and Kid Romeo, and then losing them to Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio. I think that was on the last Nitro. And then the belts were never seen again. And folks, if you want to go back and see what Rey looks like without a mask, that's your era to do so.
There you go. Sticking with the 18th and the same show, Helms defeated Chavo Guerrero Jr. to win the WCW World Cruiserweight Championship. And Booker T would defeat Rick Steiner to win the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. 11 years ago, on March 18th, 2011, Extreme Tiger defeated Carlito Caribbean Cool, L.A. Park, and El Messias in an elimination match to win the 2011 AAA Ray to Rays tournament. 10 years ago, on that same day, but in 2012, El Hijo de Pero Aguaro defeated Hector Garza, Jack Evans, and L.A. Park in an elimination match to win the 2012 AAA Ray to Rays tournament. 79 years ago, on March 19th, 1943, El Santo defeated Mercy Largo Velazquez to win the Mexican National Middleweight Championship for the first time. And 33 years ago, on March 19th, 1989, in Tokyo, the AJW would crown a new champion after Eric Shishido defeated Manami Toyota to win the vacated AJW Singles Championship title. Shishido would go on to great fame in Japan as AJ Kong.
Yeah, and she even appeared on one of the first events for AEW. So still going strong, Asha Kong is, and that was 33 years ago.
And I think I'm at 30 years ago, March 19th, 1992, in Tijuana, Mexico, El Hijo de Santo defeated Esperanto Jr. to win the WWA World Welterweight Championship. On March 19th, 2001, Edge and Christian would win the WWF Tag Titles after defeating the Hardy Boys, only to lose them an hour later to the Dudley Boys. And on that same event, defeated The Big Show to win the WWF Hardcore Championship. Do you remember who won it? Because it's not there.
Yeah, no. That's a good question.
Somebody defeated The Big Show. Actually, something tells me it was Big Boss Man. Or sorry, Boss. The Boss.
Could be.
20 years ago, March 19, 2002, at a SmackDown taping in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, William Regal defeated Diamond Dallas Page by submission to win the WWF European Championship. Also on the 19th, 2011, Eddie Edwards defeated Roderick Strong to win the ROH World Championship.
And Edwards is still going strong, working over in Impact Wrestling. And just recently joined the group of Ring of Honor or Honor No More people who just joined the company after the somewhat downfall, restructuring of and sale of Ring of Honor.
No, thank you for that, Sean. March 21st, 1991, the Steiner brothers Rick and Scott defeated Hiroshi Haas and Kenzuki Sasaki to win the IWGP Tag Team Championship. 41 years ago, March 22nd, 1981, in Greensboro, Paul Jones and the Masked Superstar defeated Ray Stevens and Ivan Koloff to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship.
For those unaware of who the Masked Superstar was, that was Bill Eadie, also known as Axe of Demolition.
And the Smash.
And he was also, I think, Superstar Machine or Big Machine during the Machine's era.
Yes, I think you're right. He also seems like a very smart guy.
Man, he's still going around doing autograph sessions with Barry Darso as Demolition.
Seems like a really nice man, too. Kind of reminds me of George Animal Steel as far as his demeanor.
I can see that.
March 22nd, 2004, Samoa Joe defeated Xavier by submission to win the ROH Championship, holding it for a record 645 days. Also on the 22nd, in that same show, a different show, but same day, Batista and Ric Flair defeated Booker T and Rob Van Dam to win the World Tag Team Championship. Wow, that was a great ROH show.
Yeah, Flair and Batista on it.
11 years ago, March 22nd, 2003, at a SmackDown taping, Wade Barrett defeated Kofi Kingston to win the WWE Intercontinental Championship. 38 years ago, March 23rd, 1984, in Singapore, Ric Flair defeated Harley Race to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship 3 days after he lost the title to Race in New Zealand. Neither of the title changes are recognized by the NWA or WWE.
So then, did it really happen?
It never did.
And that's why people say Ric Flair is more than a 16-time world champion.
There you go.
Because of that one and other events that happened at.
See, that's why you keep records. It didn't happen, but it did. 30 years ago, March 23rd, 1992, in Memphis, Brian Christopher defeated Jimmy Valiant to win the USWA Southern Heavyweight Championship for the first of 25 reigns.
Half as many as his dad.
14 years ago, March 23rd, 2008, Hiroshi Tanahashi defeated Giant Bernard to win the 2008 New Japan Cup and an IWGP Heavyweight Championship match. Tanahashi would fail in his title match against Shinsuke Nakamura a week later.
Yeah, and those that are not aware, Tanahashi had taken the title, we said, from Giant Bernard, and that is A-Train or Tenzai, Matt Bloom, who is now a high official and trainer with NXT.
Could talk all day long about how bad they executed
Prince Albert?
Tenzai and Prince Albert. I mean, again, talented guy, gets over in another country, goes to the WWFE, and just they didn't even give him a chance as Tenzai. It's like, why did he even bother dressing him up and giving him that name when you revealed before he even takes anything off that, hey, this guy was Prince Albert? Like, okay, well, you just fucked that guy.
Yeah. Lost his credibility, unfortunately.
Imagine they did that with Kane. Oh, by the way, that cool guy that just came down, yeah, we're going to ruin his career. It never happened.
He was the former Diesel or dentist.
Yes, that's right. 20 years ago, March 24th, 2002, in Japan, Masahiro Chono and Hiroshi Tenzan defeated Yuji Nagata and Manabu Nakanishi in a tournament final to win the vacated IWGP Tag Team Championship. Combo! I nailed those names pretty good. 19 years ago, March 21st, 2003, on Raw, Chief Marley declares himself one half of the World Tag Team Champions when William Regal is stripped of his half of the titles due to what was thought to be a stomach virus, but turned out to be a serious heart condition that would keep him out of action for more than a year.
On the last runs of Chief Morley, and now he's definitely advocate for marijuana smoking, has been for years down in the United States, and I think he's like a libertarian political advocate down there, even though he's a Canadian by birth. But
has he made any more fictitious porn movies of late?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Big events. 27 years ago, March 18th, 1995, ECW presented Extreme Warfare from ECW Arena in Philadelphia. 21 years ago, March 18th, 2001, WCW presented the final piece of crap pay-per-view Greed from the Jacksonville Memorial Coliseum in Jackson, Florida. 5,000, a little over 5,000 people were in attendance, with just 50,000 homes watching on pay-per-view.
Yeah, we looked at some of the title changes that happened during that and the crowning of the Cruiserweight champion. But we also saw Dustin and Dusty Rhodes teaming together against Jeff Jarrett and Ric Flair. And because of the loss, Jarrett had to kiss Dusty's donkey ass. Yes, that's an actual thing. And the main event saw Scott Steiner defeat and banish DDP from WCW.
You know, it somewhat makes sense because the last few months, especially this pay-per-view, it's like they completely digressed to their early 90s, late 80s roots of how you try to get a match over by bringing in a donkey so that the loser has to kiss his ass. And it's just like, you know, that's fine for a small show, but you're supposed to be a huge promotion. And wow, you're just fucking the dog now.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty, now that we've shit all over WCW's grave.
Oh, we'll do it a few more times because there's some uncensored coming up.
Oh, excellent. 16 years ago today, March 18th, 2006, WWE aired Saturday Night's Main Event. This was the first return of Saturday Night's Main Event since November 92. There was a drinking contest between Stone Cold Steve Austin and John Bradshaw Layfield.
Yeah, Shane McMahon defeated Shawn Michaels by submission in a street fight. Vince called for the bell when Shane had Shawn in the sharpshooter. Oh my God, dude. Do you see that coming from Montreal or not? Yes, they redid it, and this time Shawn was the victim.
Yeah, and that show, that would have been a show I would have, you know, I wish I could go back in time and go to that show because it was in the Cobo Hall. And I remember I was in Cobo Hall, but it was because the door was open. At the Detroit Auto Show and went into Cobo Hall, and to see wrestling there, it's just it's one of those places where it doesn't matter where you're sitting, you'd be like right on top of everyone. Just a nice, small, tight place to do a great show.
Yeah, I never made it there. It was in the parking lot beside it. So looking at more crapping on WCW, 27 years ago in March 1995, WCW presented Uncensored 95. It was voted the worst major wrestling show of that year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter fans. Fans would be given the shaft with this ultimate surprise of Hogan that ended up being the debut of the Ultimate Warrior, but the debut of his clone, the Renegade. We also saw the Blacktop Bully defeat Dustin Rhodes in the King of the Road match. It was a 53-foot flatbed that had a cage built around it, sections throughout it with hay and weapons and everything, and helicopters flying over above. And it was filmed like a week earlier, and it got, I guess, so bloody that they had to actually edit an uncensored match, and it cost them their jobs. Who knows? This is where we have problems. Uncensored, but we'll censor a match. Make up your melon.
Yeah.
The rest of the card saw Ming defeat Duggan in a martial arts match. Johnny B. Bad defeated Arn Anderson in a boxer versus wrestler match via knockout in 22 seconds of the third round. The Nasty Boys defeated Harlem Heat in a Texas Tornado match. And the main event saw Hogan defeat Vader in a leather strap match, even though Flair was the man tied to the strap at the end of the match. The rumored reason for this was because Hogan nor Vader wanted to do the clean job for the other. And why not throw in Flair? This is Uncensored. This is WCW.
And see, this is nice to have the Cole's notes because I watched that match, I don't know, in the last 6 months. And it explains why the ending was one of those WCW endings. It's like, what the fuck?
Too many egos and too much creative control given to the egomaniacs.
Yep. We got another WCW presented the final Uncensored 2000 on March 19th. We had Norman Smiley and the Kiss Demon defeat Lenny Lane and Rave. And we pre-mentioned the WCW Hardcore belt and the World Tag Team belt changing hands. Dustin Rhodes defeated Terry Funk in a bull rope match. Sting defeated the Total Package in a Lumberjacks with Cast match. Yikes. And Hulk Hogan defeated Ric Flair in a Yayavape Indian strap match.
Yavapai Indian strap match. I hated when they kept on saying that word. It was just really awkward. And of course, to imagine Lumberjacks with casts on, you might as well just have a whole whackload of Cowboy Bob Ortons up there.
You know, I would understand if they call it the Cowboy Bob Orton Lumberjack match or something like that.
That would make sense.
11 years ago, March 19th, 2011, Ring of Honor presented Manhattan Mayhem 4 from New York. And 9 years ago, March 19th, 2013, TNA taped One Night Only, Hardcore Justice 2. I don't know how it can be One Night Only when it's a part 2, but hey, this event would not air until 3.5 months later.
Yeah, and they also taped a One Night Only event called Tournament of Champions 2013, and the show featured a one-night tournament of past TNA World Champions. Bobby Roode would win the tournament, and the losers that were also former champions included Cowboy James Storm, Mr. Anderson, Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy, Austin Aries, Kurt Angle, Bully Ray, and Sting. They just seem to stockpile these things, and this is an era
Anderson. Sorry, I was a little late on that.
Mr. Anderson. Yeah, it's just weird how they were able to stockpile all these and just put them out randomly month to month as sort of their in-your-house versions, which they do now. Sort of those events on their own streaming service at least once a month as well.
28 years ago, March 20th, 1994, WWF presented WrestleMania 10. 10 years in the making, this would be the first WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. It would feature 2 WWF Championship bouts, the first televised ladder match in company history, and the last afternoon pay-per-view event. And I will say, out of all the WrestleManias, this is definitely would be in my top 3.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Probably my top 5 for sure. Not sure if it makes the top 3, but you can't go wrong with an opening match of Brett versus Owen, and Owen picking up the victory, even though Brett then walks up with the title at the end of the show.
31 years ago, March 21st, 1991, WCW New Japan presented WCW New Japan Super Show, aka Super Brawl 91, from the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. IWGP Heavyweight Champion Tatsumi Fujinami defeated WCW World Champion Ric Flair to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And this is the one that we did already mention. And there was just a big old...
We didn't mention this one. That was a Harley and Flair issue with the titles and this is
the other one
situation with Fujinami and Flair and the recognition of the title changes, because in Japan the NWA title and the WCW title were not considered the same title. WCW still had a working relationship with the NWA, so technically the NWA are saying that Fujinami won their title, but WCW said he didn't win their title. Once again, weird. So WCW, and they ended dumping. Flair had dumped over the top rope for a DQ for the WCW title, but not the NWA title. So the match continued, and Fujinami pulled out the victory for the Japan audience. This is another weird ending to the match due to the fact that the match was aired in North America the following month. Flair's WCW World title was not on the line, yet on the American version of the show, the match was considered a title versus title bout. And I'm still confused even after reading that a couple times over.
Basically, and WCW have done it before where they basically... it's the same footage, but Japan edited it for their purposes and WCW edited it for their purposes, so both stars could look good on both sides. You'd just be confused if you actually watched it and went, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Yeah. So hopefully that clears it all up. Oh, the phone lines are still ringing. Oh, 22 years today, March 21st, 1999, ECW presented Living Dangerously. And 11 years ago, on that same day in 2010, TNA presented Destination X. And 18 years ago, on March 22nd, 2003, at ROH Night of Champions in Philadelphia. 25 years ago, March 23rd, 1997, WWF presented WrestleMania 13 Heat. This Mania is the lowest buy rate for a WrestleMania ever, pre-WWE Network, of course, and the building wasn't a sellout.
No, if you go to Grill and JR, he does a good rundown of this show where it's basically headlined unofficially by it's headlined by Sid against Undertaker, and their secondary thing was supposed to be the Chicago street fight because they were in Chicago, but almost like WrestleMania 18, the real main event and show stealer was a non-title match. 18 had Hogan Rock, and 13 had Bret Austin. That could have closed out the show.
Yeah, that was a definitely good match. 31 years ago, I already did that. Oh, no, this is the Stars and Stripes one. You want to do that one?
Sure. WWF presented WrestleMania 7. I actually watched this during my history class, thanks to Mr. Gooder.
Nice.
In high school. Superstars and Stripes Forever. Their pay-per-view audience would drop from 160,000 the previous year, and they had moved the event to the 92,000 LA Memorial Coliseum to the LA Sports Arena next door. Some say this move was due to security concerns. Others say it was because of ticket sales were slow. It's actually a mixture of both. Once again, something to wrestle with. They did a megasode putting a bunch of them that they'd already previously talked to about together, so you could listen for like 7 hours straight. And when it came to WrestleMania 7, the security concerns were definitely there because the U.S. government was willing to pay for security for the Super Bowl, but not for WrestleMania. And it would cost millions of dollars for Vince to secure that. It was during the start of the Gulf War and everything going on that way. And I think by the time it ended, and the Gulf War or that sort of stuff ended by the time WrestleMania happened. But with all the planning and the costs, they had to move it over to the LA Sports Arena. Plus, because of the theme of everything going on with the Iraqi sympathizer and that, people were turned off from attending WWE event with that in mind. So it was a mixture of attendance, ticket sales, and security that formed them having to go to the LA Sports Arena. And yeah, I still enjoyed that show. A lot of people crap on it, but
I think this is like that event was probably Hogan's last good match in the WWF, and maybe even all the shit he did in WCW, because him and Sergeant Slaughter, it was old school, but it was very entertaining. And Slaughter, people hated him, and
he had death threats.
He was fan. Yeah, I know, but he was fantastic. It's kind of like now what's going on. Where's the Russian? Where's the bad Russian?
Yeah, I don't know if they.
I know it's different nowadays. Yeah. I do.
I know. Beforehand, yeah, it always used to be some sort of evil. Whatever the evil of the real world was a character in the wrestling world. Also on that card was a fantastic match between Bossman and Perfect, where Bossman was so athletic at that one. And of course, you cannot forget the reunition of Savage and Elizabeth after an amazing career versus career Savage Warrior match, where Savage brought out the best in Warrior for that match as well. That could have did steal the show in my case, but that could have main evented just as much as we said about Hogan and Rock, and Austin and Hart. Savage Warrior could have been the main event of WrestleMania 7.
26 years ago, March 24th, 1996, WCW presented another Uncensored 96. About 9,000 were in attendance for this shit show of a main event. Its pay-per-view numbers were up, but it would be voted the worst major show of the year by Wrestling Observer Newsletter for the second straight year. In a WCW main event pre-show match, the Steiners fought the Nasty Boys to a no contest. Conan defeated Eddie Guerrero to retain the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. After this, it all went to hell with such beauty matches of Colonel Robert Parker defeating Medusa in an intergender match. The Booty Man defeated Diamond Dallas Page, poor DDP. The Giant defeated Loch Ness. Sting and Booker T defeated the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, in a Chicago street fight. And the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, defeated the Alliance to end Hulkamania. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Ming, the Barbarian, Lex Luger, the Taskmaster, Z Gangsta, and the Ultimate Solution with Woman, Miss Elizabeth, and Jimmy Hart in a 3-tier Doomsday cage match with rules that were kind of a mystery. Now, Sean, you don't have to explain the rules because there really wasn't any, but what did you think of that match? It was cool. The big cage and the ring, and then the other ring, in the center of the arena, but the match.
Yeah, they had this where the staging would be was the triple cage, and loaded 2 wrestlers into every section of the cage because one layer was divided into 2. But then Z Gangsta and the Ultimate Solution weren't out there at the time for the whole match. Hogan and Savage made their way through, and then somehow in the ring, and then they went back to the other cage where the ring was, and more brawling happened because all the other ones came out of their cages. I don't know. And Beefcake saved the day with pie plates.
I thought it was frying pans.
Yeah, that sounded like pie plates.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, they were like, the dollar store ones that you can get for, if you're going to use.
So, yeah, if anybody can figure out what that actually was, yeah, that would be the really big question to ask anybody who was in charge of WCW or even commentating for WCW, like a Tony Schiavone at the time, to go, what were they thinking and how did you make your way through this whole thing to begin with? Yeah, train wrecks galore with Uncensored. I think we're going to actually skip through the Monday Night Wars. There really
Sure.
wasn't anything huge that happened during that episode versus each other. Bigger episode is going to be on next week's with the demise of WCW. So we can skip down to the remaining birthdays and wrap up with our Superstar Spotlight on The Undertaker and call it a evening.
Alrighty. Birthdays. March 21st. We got a bunch of them. Actually, 3. Chris Candido would have turned 50 years old. Killer Kelly turns 30. And it would have been the 115th birthday of the man known as the father of Lucha Libre, Salvador Lutero. Lutheros Gonzalez. There, I think that's better. March 22nd, Bay Presley turns 26. On the 23rd, Jesse Gordy turns 43. Also on the 23rd, it's a happy 51st birthday for Hiroshi Yamamoto, a.k.a. Hiroshi Tenzan. And March 24th is loaded. Lana, a.k.a. CJ Perry, turns 37. D'Angelo De Niro turns 44. Jake Hagar of AEW turns 40. Christopher Daniels turns 51. Barry Horowitz turns a young 62. Epico Cologne is 40, and Lacey Evans is 32. And I've seen some old pictures of Barry Horowitz, and he looks like just a nice older gentleman.
Yeah, he's still in good shape and keeping involved with the wrestling business, doing different appearances. But yeah, he can give himself a good pat in the back. Happy birthday, Barry.
And do you want to do the Superstar Spotlight?
Yeah, sure. It's on The Undertaker, born March 24th, 1965, just turned 57 years old. His real name is Mark William Calloway, and has gone by the Lord of Darkness and a bunch of other names. The Undertaker is an American actor and retired professional wrestler, widely regarded as one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. He spent the vast majority of his career wrestling for WWE and is best known for his Deadman character, whether it's Biker or the Big Evil. He remains employed by WWE, though, and through a 15-year contract signed in 2019. So a lot of people know that he started his career in 87, working under other gimmicks in World Class Championship Wrestling and also with USWA. He was in WCWA Texas and went through all the system, finally made his way to WCW. Was part of the Skyscrapers, eventually was managed by Paul Heyman, and he wasn't really happy. I think even Ole Anderson had told him that he's not going to make a dime and draw anybody. And so he sort of knew where his place was going to be in the wrestling world, according to Ole Anderson. Paul Heyman actually advocated for him and called up WWE and people like Bruce Pritchard. He'd also made contact with Hogan, being part of Suburban Commando. So he was getting his ins along the way. He ended up getting injured, and Vince McMahon didn't want to end up seeing him. But then they had a show in the area where Vince was. So he met up with him, loved him from the start, and boom, he got hired. The rest is history. We got brought in, managed by Brother Love, also known as Kane the Undertaker when he first started. Then due to obligations for Bruce, they transferred him over to Percy Pringle, who had managed him as Texas Red against Bruiser Brody in WCCW for his debut match. But yeah, we saw the life and career go on with Undertaker and Paul Bearer, the greatest story possibly ever told, beyond Savage and Elizabeth, being Undertaker and his brother Kane, and Kane's alive, and the return of his brother from the death, supposedly, and refusing to face him. They faced each other a few times at WrestleMania. The streak that happened, his WrestleMania record is 25-2, losing only to Brock Lesnar, which he shouldn't have, but he was also knocked silly on that one. He probably should have lost to a Bray Wyatt or somebody who deserved or needed the push. His other loss was to Roman Reigns.
I agree with the Brock Lesnar loss. I don't agree with the Roman Reigns loss.
Well, by that time, the loss didn't matter.
It did, though, at least to me. It's like, okay, you let him have this huge streak, and all of a sudden, what, because he's old? I understand Brock Lesnar. Look at Brock Lesnar. He's a freaking beast. But Roman Reigns, no offense to Roman Reigns, but he ain't no damn Brock Lesnar. And it's like, I can believe that the character Brock Lesnar could beat The Undertaker, but I don't believe that Seth Rollins, that other guy can beat what they built as The Undertaker.
Yeah, that was just building up him. Unfortunately, I think Wade Taker stayed a little bit past to where he should have been, because he had the horrible match with Goldberg in Saudi Arabia, along with the Brothers of Destruction against DX in Saudi Arabia. Just train wrecks that you want to kind of forget and move past. But he was managed by Percy Pringle and Paul Bearer, the same guy, Paul Heyman and Brother Love. Married to WWE diva Michelle McCool. He worked as Texas Red, The Punisher, The Master of Pain, Dice Morgan, Mean Mark Callis, and Commando, all before landing with this Undertaker gimmick that has lasted over 30 years. Looking quickly at some of his achievements and awards: one-time USWA Unified World Heavyweight Champion, one-time WCWA Texas Heavyweight Champion, four-time WWE WWF Champion, three-time WWE World Heavyweight Champion, one-time Hardcore Champion, six-time World Tag Team Champion with various partners along the way, one-time WCW Tag Team Champion. That was the WWE version of WCW, because it was Brothers of Destruction that got them before they got retired those belts. The 2007 Royal Rumble winner, and 15 Slammy Awards in total. Wrestling Observer Newsletter said he had the best gimmick from 1990 to 94. Match of the year in 2009 and 2010 against Shawn Michaels at both WrestleManias that they fought each other. Worst match I mentioned with DX against the Brothers of Destruction. And the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, good old Dave Meltzer, putting him into his Hall of Fame, voted by the fans supposedly in 2004. So, huge career for Mark Calloway, who was supposed to do nothing, basically. And this next weekend, leading into WrestleMania next Friday, a week from today, he'll be taking his rightful place in the WWE Hall of Fame, and only the second person to be inducted into the Hall of Fame by Vince McMahon. Usually Vince is behind the scenes, and he changed his mind and did Austin because of the amazing work that they did together, and the great father-son sort of relationship that he has with Mark Calloway, even though the age is close to being father-son, I guess. But they have that close bond that there really was nobody else that could induct The Undertaker, except for maybe Kane, because Paul Bearer is dead, and maybe Bruce Pritchard could have, but it's rightfully, I guess, Vince McMahon.
Storyline-wise, the $1 Million Man could.
True, but I don't think they had a big connection to each other.
No, I meant storyline-wise, because...
Storyline-wise, for sure, yeah. But, yeah, that concludes our list of birthdays, title changes, headlines, and we have a bunch of other things coming up. I'll let Chris do our regular credits and thank yous, and do a couple reminders before we sign off.
All right, so of course it's a happy birthday to the American Badass, and that is it for this week. This Week in Wrestling History is compiled, of course, from the vast land of Google, Wikipedia, CageSideSeats.com, and most importantly, from fans and journalists that had front row seats to history. And as always, a big thank you to our sponsor, Coolbet, Coolbet.com, and sportsbook betting in casino games. Stay cool and bet responsibly. And as always, a thanks and a shout out to our Johners as listeners.
Yeah, so we're always thankful for everybody, regardless of where you're listening and watching from. And for those in Ontario, specifically, we are in round number 3 of the March Madness, the final 16 of 64. We're wrapping up at the end of the week, I believe. It should be April 1st by the time this ends. You can decide who's going to be ranked number 1 by the fan vote, because we've had Scumbag Yates and 2-time Tyson Dukes. And number 4 will happen at the next week. And also look to our website, scumbagswrestling.ca, for information on the Predictions League. It's fun. You get prizes and bragging rights. All starts WrestleMania weekend with year number 2. So until then, thanks a lot for everybody for being with us, and we'll see you next week with more history.